Hello, and welcome to My Bolt EUV. This is Jim, and we're going from point A to point B. Climb in, let's go. So I've been working on this episode now for over a month. Primarily it has been the research that's been taking me so long, and I've come away with more questions than answers. So the purpose of this episode is to inform through a lot of questions that I do not have answers for. So we'll be calling this episode A Lot of Questions and Not Many Answers. So one of the first questions I have is related to DC fast charging. So if the Chevy Bolt EV and EUV can regen brake at over 70 kilowatts when using a combination of the brake, the paddle, and one pedal driving, why is DC fast charge limited to 55 kilowatts? My research yielded a couple of refining questions. Is it because of the battery cooling system? Since regen only comes in short bursts over 55 kilowatts, the cooling system can handle it on these occasions, right? The answer to that is no. It is simply because regen energy is using the same electrical connections that deliver power from the battery to the drive system to deliver electricity back from the drive system to the battery. And those wiring harnesses are rated at a higher amperage and voltage than the harness that comes from the CCS DC fast charge connector to the battery charging system. Therefore, in theory, it should be possible to retrofit a higher capacity, i.e. a more robust wiring harness from the DC fast charge connector to the high power distribution module to increase the speed of charging, because the DC side of the connection to and from the battery, from the inverter, and the associated wiring harness is already capable of handling up to 150 kilowatts in acceleration and 75 kilowatts on regen. It is easy to ascertain then that the weak link is the wiring harness from the DC fast charge connector to the high power distribution module. And that is something that I think could be easily retrofitted. Also, this would require a change in the software code in the system that handles the maximum charging speed for the Bolt EUV. And finally, when the Bolt was refreshed in the 2022 year model and the EUV was introduced, why did GM fail to make the change in the wiring harness? There are two reasons, or more actually, but the two primary reasons, and this has been confirmed by GM engineers in interviews on other YouTube channels, is that one, there would have been an increase in the cost of the materials, i.e. the new wiring harness, and the design cost for this update to the wiring harness. There would have also been engineering costs for changing the software code, and it would probably come out to about $250 per unit or per car. Amortizing the cost over 100 units, and that's about a $25 million increase in actual production costs, and that, for a company like General Motors, is huge. And by the time this rolled down to the consumer, us, me and you, this would have been an at least $1,250 increase in the price of a car, because for every dollar they spend, it costs $5 to the consumer. So let's take a quick look at General Motors by the numbers. The Bolt battery recall cost General Motors over $1.3 billion. It cost LG Chem even more money than that. Their EBITDA, which is the earnings before interest, taxes, depreciation, and amortization, also known as EBITDA, in 2022 was $21.6 billion. If you put those two numbers together, that shows that General Motors had a 6.7% loss of earnings on the recall itself over the past 3 years. And now for the second question, and it is a doozy. It does not apply just to the Bolt EV line. It applies to all EVs. With the increasing number of EVs showing up in salvage auctions, why hasn't someone opened a business to repair and recycle complete salvage title EVs and or pull the powertrain and battery systems into a used EV car parts warehouse to meet the future needs of EV repairs? Now, I've done a lot of looking into this potential business model. I do not have the funding for startup costs to venture out on such an endeavor, but believe me, I would if I could. In my opinion, it's such a good idea that I'm putting it out there for everyone in hopes that someone with the funding can get this started. It is important. I know there are a lot of conversion companies out there that are grabbing up Tesla salvages to use in the retro car conversions. EV West in San Marcos, California is a good example of these types of companies, and I'm going to put a link to EV West in the notes below. So the idea that I have would involve grabbing those cars that cannot be repaired and pulling the components out that are useful and storing them in a warehouse for future sales as spares for cars that are no longer in warranty. For those cars that can be repaired, they would be repaired and offered for sale as low-cost EVs. And this is an important idea for lower-income families. For almost 4 years now, I've been driving an EV on a regular, almost daily basis. And I've put over 12,500 miles now on a brand new 2023 EUV that I've owned for less than 6 months. I am convinced that EVs are the future of the automotive industry. They drive better, they handle better, they're going to last longer. It's important that when one of them gets damaged and wrecked, that they be salvaged in any way they can. And what can't be salvaged should be 100% recycled. But we know that things are going to fall through the cracks as we go forward. So it's important that we get started on knowing how to do this and making things available and better for everybody going forward. And we need to start today. So now let's come back to tie the two questions together. Getting the high voltage and battery components out of salvage vehicles would help the aftermarket businesses to develop the components and software necessary to improve the DC fast charge capabilities of the Bolt EV and EUV. It is also a low-cost alternative to having General Motors develop the kit, and I promise you there is a very good market for a DC fast charge improvement on the Bolt EV. By the end of this year, there's probably going to be 250,000 of them on the roads. So somebody should be able to do this. It's not that difficult to think about coming up with a new wire harness. And this is especially true now as we move into the realm of the North American charging system and the Tesla adapter on all future EVs going forward from General Motors. I'm basically putting this episode out there asking these questions to get the conversation started. I don't have all the answers. I don't have all the ideas. And I look forward to seeing the comments and would love to hear from you about what your thoughts are about the future of the Bolt and Bolt EUV DC fast charge, the potentiality of getting an upgrade to where we can charge a little bit faster at DC fast charge stations, and what you think about the potential of having salvaged EVs put out there as low-cost alternatives for people who can't afford to buy a brand new vehicle. It's just a few of the ideas that I've had, and I would like to hear from you. Well, that about wraps up this week. Lots of questions, I know. But remember to subscribe, share, comment, and like. And if you want to know when I upload something new, just hit the notification bell. Also, remember, treat everyone with kindness, put a smile on your face, help someone today, and pay it forward when someone does the same for you. Again, thanks for stopping by, and I'll see you soon or somewhere along the route from point A to point B. Take it easy.